Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and it's been about a week since Oscar nominations were officially announced. We are back here now to go a little bit deeper into what all these means, where are our current predictions at. But before we dive into today, as always, consider dropping a like, a subscription, stay up to date with everything that we're doing here on the channel, because we have fun stuff coming each and every week. But Matt, where should we start today? I mean, we got a lot of categories to go over.
Well, I think let's start at the top. Let's go all the way from Best Picture down to those shorts categories. Let's discuss everything all the way through. And I think we can kind of talk as we go, what's locked. And I think Best Picture is one that we can say pretty firmly seems like a lock at this point. That's Oppenheimer. I can't see a path for anything else winning at this point anymore. A few weeks ago, you would have heard me in a video saying Barbie is going to, if it misses Best Director, there's going to be a backlash that could create a wave that pushes Barbie to win Best Picture. However, I think what's happened with that backlash is that people had more of a backlash to the backlash. People got really annoyed at the people who were very upset at that whole thing, and I would actually say now Barbie is probably the sixth most likely film to win.
I mean, I am of the belief it's Oppenheimer in the field, like you mentioned before, but if I had to put a number two, Poor Things has the most other nominations on paper, but the wins are the question mark. I know that we're very confident in Emma Stone, but if you go online, Emma Stone's not really the favorite to a lot of people, which doesn't make sense. I feel like after the BAFTA miss for Gladstone, that kind of axed her chances, but I would have Poor Things number two. I would have Anatomy at number three, because I think, while it's not in the bag, I think it's like the far out front for original screenplay. I think it's taking the BAFTA for that, and then at BAFTA, I think there's a shot that maybe it could upset in picture as well. I don't think it's guaranteed, but I think there's like a small shot that upsets in BAFTA Best Film, and then after that, I don't really see the case for much else. Barbie, maybe. It wins adapted, that's its route. American Fiction, same thing. Holdovers, I guess, but everything else, Zone, Killers, Maestro, Past Lives, you're just happy to be here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And truly, though, this is one of our locked categories. Oppenheimer is winning. There's no other way around that. Now, I will just briefly touch on the theory, the stat that I always fall back on, which is that it's really difficult, if not impossible, to win Best Picture if you are a previous nominee. We're going to see that stat break this year because of Oppenheimer. And I think an important thing to consider when using this stat, because I'm going to go right back to what I call the underdog stat next year. I'm going to stand strong with that every single year until it's undeniable otherwise. And I think the important thing to look at why Oppenheimer's winning is because the majority of people out there do believe that this is Christopher Nolan's best film, because the big thing that keeps previous nominee or previous winner directors from winning again is that people will always compare to their past films, and if a film is not undeniably better than everything else that they've made, then that comparison will make that film suffer, which is what we're seeing with Killers of the Flower Moon, which is what we saw with Fabelmans.
Going to your stat, if you were to look here for a underdog, someone who hasn't been nominated before, you only really have four options. That's being Past Lives, American Fiction, The Zone of Interest, and Anatomy of a Fall, which we both said that, hey, there's maybe a shot for Anatomy and American Fiction, but Zone and Past Lives are probably in the bottom half of our nominees here. That would not make a year
absolutely.
5. But you mentioned being locked up. I think even more locked up than Picture is Best Director for Christopher Nolan.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, there's, like, what is number two here? There is no number two. There's none. There's none.
It's going to be like the Power of the Dog year, where Jane Campion was just number one and there was no number two. You can make a case for number two, Denis Villeneuve, Greta Gerwig, but they both missed. So now there is no real clear-cut number two. If I had to put a number two in Gold Derby, I might put Jonathan Glazer just for fun, but I don't know who actually would get the second most amount of votes.
I would say Yorgos Lanthimos is probably the second place. But look, the director category, a lot of these categories are, they're pretty used to splitting up the love through the season. But the director category most years seems like a sweep. Last year, it was Daniel's all the way except Golden Globes, where they went Spielberg. And the year before that, it was all Jane Campion. Year before that, it was all Chloe Zhao. Right, they're no strangers to giving out sweeps for Best Director, and to me, that's what Christopher Nolan is. He is a steamroller. He has such industry respect, and even if they don't award him in some other categories, they are guaranteed to award him right here.
I fully agree with that. I think the Nolan sweep continues, and I think it'll be something very interesting to look at next year because with all the buzz that Dune Part 2 is getting right now, I'm not saying it's Oppenheimer Part 2, but it's kind of the same pre-release feelings that Oppenheimer had, and I'm just going to be very interested to see what is Villeneuve's trajectory next year. I'm not saying he's going to win, but can he overcome the sequel? Can he overcome the blockbuster? Right now,
I don't think
I'm not sure, but
he's not
these
gonna get
pre-release
nominated.
buzz from industry people, from people who've seen the early stuff, has been very, very, very positive, similar to what the early buzz with Oppenheimer was.
Okay, so let's move on to another category. This one is much less locked because I think that there's a few interesting angles here of what could happen. That is the Best Actor category, and I'll just say off the top, I'm currently sticking with Cillian Murphy. Who are you with?
Me too.
Cillian Murphy. Okay, so
Whoa,
Cillian Murphy, right?
whoa. Gold Derby has Paul Giamatti at number 1. When did this happen?
Whoa. That's nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Yes, nonsense.
Absolutely. If Oppenheimer is sweeping the way that it seems like it is, you're not gonna award the face of the movie. And okay, let's go through some paths right here of what could happen. So, first thing, I mean, Cillian Murphy's got Golden Globe drama, which is much more prestigious than Golden Globe comedy. Paul Giamatti has that Golden Globe comedy and the Critics' Choice right now. So Paul Giamatti does have more awards, but I don't think either of those really matter all that much. What it's going to come down to is SAG and BAFTA. And with those awards, I see a combination of things that could happen. So I think at this point, it's pretty much a given Cillian Murphy will win BAFTA, although there is a small chance for a Bradley Cooper upset at BAFTA. Then SAG, I think, can go to any of these three. I would still give Cillian Murphy the edge at SAG because it seems like Oppenheimer will take ensemble. It seems like Oppenheimer will take supporting actor, and giving Cillian Murphy Best Actor makes sense from there. I've heard the argument that Paul Giamatti is loved by SAG. He has multiple SAG awards at this point, but I'll believe it when I see it. Honestly, I would say I think Bradley Cooper is closer to winning the SAG award than Paul Giamatti is. So, in my opinion right now, I think the most likely circumstance is Cillian Murphy takes BAFTA and SAG and then just wins the Oscar.
I am of the same belief as you. What I'd like to see at BAFTA for a possible Cooper upset was Maestro getting the casting, the same way Elvis got in for casting last year, which kind of showed like, hey, they really liked that Austin Butler was playing Elvis. And I get maybe it's not the same thing because Cooper's the director, he kind of picked himself sort of thing. But, you know, that would have been a sign of support that, hey, we really liked Bradley Cooper as Leonard Bernstein. So I still have Murphy at BAFTA. I definitely think that Cooper would be number 2 there. And then going to SAG, I think it's like a 3-horse race. I think they're all right neck and neck. I don't think it's Murphy 50%. Oh, it's Giamatti 50%. Oh, Cooper's dead. I think they all still have a shot because SAG, you talk about SAG loving Giamatti. Actors love Bradley Cooper. Whenever he's on a press campaign, whenever he's talking to people, people just hype him up. They say how great he is to work with, how fun he is. So I think that could add a lot. But SAG also really likes stories. And the biggest story here is the fact that this is Cillian Murphy's first big leading role in a blockbuster, his time to shine, and he knocked it out of the park. And if we're going narrative base, I don't think it's Giamatti, like some people have been saying for a narrative base. It's Cillian Murphy.
Well, and yeah, I don't think either of them really has that strong a narrative. And, you know, if we're thinking of who goes for narratives, it is SAG. And yeah, to that point, I don't think any of them have enough of a narrative to sway SAG. You could argue all of them do. Yeah, I do see that this is a bit of a contentious category because, I mean, we just said that Cillian Murphy is ahead and he just has Golden Globe drama, which Lily Gladstone does too. Emma Stone has the exact same wins that Paul Giamatti does. So technically, we can't say statistically Paul Giamatti is behind while Emma Stone is ahead. They are at the same point. That said, there is the fact that Lily Gladstone does not have a BAFTA nomination. But in my imaginary route of how this award played out, I never imagined that Lily Gladstone would win BAFTA, because I know you thought Lily Gladstone would win BAFTA, but to me, the only reason you could give Lily Gladstone the Oscar for this role, it's narrative. You know, she has a fantastic, fantastic narrative, and her speech that she gave at the Golden Globes was absolutely magnificent. She has the narrative. SAG goes for the narrative. BAFTA doesn't give a shit about narrative. So in thinking about who would win what, it all hinges on who wins SAG, in my opinion. If Lily Gladstone wins SAG, that shows that her narrative is strong enough to get her that Oscar. If she loses SAG, then it's Emma Stone. It doesn't matter who she loses SAG to. I've heard some people even entertain, ooh, maybe Annette Bening could win SAG.
Naiad.
Even if she does, it means nothing. All it means is Emma Stone wins the Oscar, because it'll default to whoever wins BAFTA. I've also heard some people say Sandra Hüller is going to win the BAFTA, which I think is a little bit wild. That's a bit of an out there prediction. I think it's smarter to stick with Emma Stone.
I mean, I think if you're going to go away from Emma Stone, it would be to Hüller, and that would be the case that Anatomy just sweeps because they love the film. It takes picture, it takes screenplay, it takes actors. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that would be the route sort of thing. If we're entertaining the fact that Annette Bening's winning SAG, you would entertain that Hüller could win BAFTA.
Yeah, if you're talking BAFTA, yes. Sorry, I thought you just meant that Hüller would be second at the Oscars over Lily Gladstone.
No.
And I was going to say, you are nutso. What the hell are you talking about?
I mean, if she does win BAFTA, maybe I would consider her being over Gladstone, but that hasn't happened yet. I still think Emma Stone's winning the BAFTA.
Only if Gladstone also loses SAG. That would be the nail in the coffin. If Gladstone loses SAG, she is done. There is no route for her to win. But otherwise, honestly, all Emma Stone needs is BAFTA.
So we just went from two categories that are pretty up in the air to a category I think is pretty locked up, Best Supporting Actress. I know I've been saying all year, it doesn't feel like Randolph's going to sweep. I still am going to hold reservations for BAFTA, but I think that she now officially has Oscar in the bag.
Yes, I agree with that part. I don't think you can doubt BAFTA's going to go for her.
I mean, Kwan was a sweeper,
really
and the
shocked.
Best Picture sweeper. I mean, there's a chance they just go with Emily Blunt and Oppenheimer.
But they didn't like Everything Everywhere All at Once that much, right? They only gave it the editing prize. It's not like it won any of the other awards that it was sweeping anywhere else.
Okay,
so that to me says that it was vulnerable in all of those places simply because they didn't like it.
But they
and
nominated
I guess you could
it
make the
everywhere.
argument. They nominated it everywhere, but they didn't give it any of the wins except editing that it won everywhere else. It didn't win screenplay, it didn't win picture, didn't win director. If it was a picture winner, then I'm with you, you know.
So, but holdovers, it's not going to win
everything.
screenplay, it's not going to win director, it's not going to win actor, it's not going to win picture. You know what could win all those? Oppenheimer. And you know what won the BAFTA stuff? Banshees.
Well, really, All Quiet was the one that won everything.
Yeah, you're right. I'm misremembering. Yeah, so
it's all good, all good.
So like I don't know. I just feel like it's not smart, obviously, to sway away from Randolph, but the sprinkles are there where like I could see someone go else. It's just I guess there's not really a strong number two, but I wouldn't even say that Keegan was the strong number two last year when he had his upset. So I'm like, I'm not going to pick someone else than Randolph, but when it happens, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that was pretty obvious. Why didn't I actually stick to it? I mean, I'm not going to pick away from Randolph, but it just like the sprinkles are there where I could see someone else, but I'm not confident enough to go elsewhere, but I'm not 100% like, oh, this is a 100% lock.
I guess so. I can see where you're coming from, I suppose, but I just don't see a strong path for anyone else. And you are right that Keoghan did not have a strong path last year either, and it was a total shock, total surprise at BAFTA. But I don't know. I just have a feeling that Divine Joy Randolph takes this because Banshees was strong. I guess Oppenheimer's strong too. I mean, I guess you're right that Emily Blunt could take it. I would also say it's possible that she takes it at SAG because SAG absolutely adores Emily Blunt. absolutely adores her. They love her. They awarded her for A Quiet Place.
Crazy bonkers win.
So if Emily Blunt does upset at BAFTA, does upset at SAG, which probably won't happen, but at that point, do we have to take her seriously as the Oscar winner?
I mean, I would if she wins at SAG. Regardless of her BAFTA win, I think if she wins at SAG, she wins the Oscar.
Actually, no. You know what? I would push back on that because if Randolph has everything, if Randolph takes BAFTA, not Blunt, and Blunt just has SAG, then I would not predict Blunt for the Oscar because we know that Blunt has won SAGs before while not even nominated for the Oscar. So I guess in my opinion, I would say in order to see anyone else but Randolph win, I would need to see Emily Blunt take the next 2 awards.
There's this giant talk, I guess, between us of Oppenheimer possibly winning 2 acting awards, but the one where I think it's most secure in is Best Supporting Actor, where can it really win 3 acting awards? I know Everything Everywhere won that last year, but that just seems weird to have that 2 straight years in a row. Robert Downey Jr. is the front runner right now. I just watched Barbie again last night, and I'm like, oh, Gosling is so good. I would like to see him win something. Like, I don't know who I like more between the 2, but I would like to see Gosling win a award, but I feel like Globes was probably his best shot.
Globes was his best shot. His second best shot is SAG. So we could see him win SAG still, but I do think this is going to be a sweep for Robert Downey Jr. the same way that I think it's going to be a sweep for Divine Joy Randolph. So I do predict that Robert Downey Jr. will take the SAG, will take the BAFTA, will take the Oscar. There is a small possibility that Ryan Gosling takes SAG, although there is no possibility he takes BAFTA. And in the end, that means that no matter what, even if Gosling wins SAG, Downey Jr. still wins the Oscar. I don't see any other path for anyone else.
I would agree, but one thing I would like to say this category is, for as much hate as it's getting online, because the internet favorites of Melton and Sessa missed out, I think this is a phenomenal category. Like, this would be 5 of my 6 favorite supporting acting performances of the year. Like, Sterling K. Brown got in, Ruffalo got in, De Niro got in, and then of course we have Downey and Gosling. So even though there's not really much to talk about here for an awards perspective, because it's a clear top one, I still think this is a phenomenal category. Maybe my favorite acting category that we have this year.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I should mention as well, if we're talking SAG and me saying Ryan Gosling could win at SAG, I would actually say very not likely because, as said before, SAG loves narrative. And who has a narrative? Robert Downey Jr., the movie star who basically was down and out and untouchable for 15 years from the early 90s to the mid 2000s, and then he had this sort of revival where suddenly he became the biggest movie star in the world due to Iron Man. And through that, he has pushed and pushed and pushed and become sort of this force of good in Hollywood that a lot of people really just adore. And I think the narrative of him coming from that place of nothing, of no one wanting to hire him, to now being in this Oscar-winning position, that is too good of a narrative to pass up on for SAG. So it's a sweep for Robert Downey Jr.
Moving away from narratives, moving away from acting categories, so now we're into Best Original Screenplay, where I think the screenplay categories are pretty fun this year, because usually screenplay is kind of one of the more locked up categories. I feel like when you get to Oscar day, it's like, oh yeah, obviously it's this movie, obviously it's that movie. This year, I think each category has at least 2, if not 3, films that have a shot of winning the awards.
Well, you know why it's not more locked up? We do not have WGA winners.
That is true. No WGA winners. Barbie, who completed every precursor in original screenplay, is now an adapted, so we don't really know who's the strongest in original. But the one thing I would like to say for who the strongest in original is you looked at Globe, you had films of all categories put together, and who took the award? Anatomy. You look at the BAFTA lineup, who's most likely taking that award? Anatomy. So then, Anatomy has 2 awards over its competition. That to me shows, hey, there's people, there's passion, there's strength. But I know those voters aren't the Oscar voters. Could they go elsewhere? Possibly, but I'm going to stick with Anatomy until either it loses BAFTA or there's some last-minute surge of support for either Past Lives or The Holdovers.
Yeah, to be fair, so this is how I feel about this category right now. Anatomy of a Fall did win Golden Globe, But you know what wasn't nominated? The Holdovers, which means we haven't seen these two films go head to head when Barbie is not in the mix. We would be able to see something at WGA, although Barbie would likely win WGA and Holdovers still wouldn't win. So what would Holdovers win? There's nothing that it can win. Anatomy of a Fall does have that Golden Globe win. It will likely get BAFTA unless somehow they give it to Barbie in the original screenplay category again, and we once again know nothing about this category. Although I would say if Anatomy loses BAFTA, that's a stronger showing that it's weak in this category.
I agree.
Than that. So to me, what it comes down to is BAFTA. If Anatomy of a Fall wins BAFTA, it wins the Oscar. If Anatomy of a Fall loses BAFTA to either Barbie or to the Holdovers, then the Holdovers wins.
I have the same mindset for BAFTA. If Anatomy does not take the win there, it could be to anyone. It doesn't have to be to Barbie. It doesn't have to be to Holdovers. It could be to anyone else. Yep. It just shows like, hey, it doesn't have that block of support. The Holdovers, exactly. I agree, there's not really a shot to win. And then Past Lives, I still think there's some sort of passion for that film to maybe get it up, but I just don't think it's enough to get it over Holdovers or Anatomy at this very moment. So I'm going to stick with Anatomy. And you know what? I wouldn't be shocked if WGA maybe doesn't vote for Barbie. I mean, obviously we don't know that, but they may not vote for Barbie because like, oh, it's adapted, it's in the wrong category, blah blah blah. We know that. We have to fall in line with the Oscars.
I don't think that'll end up happening. We've seen in the past, like WGA gave Moonlight the original screenplay prize when it was campaigning in Adapted. So they've done that type of thing in the past where the Oscars go off of what they're doing. But yes, this is a two-horse race to me. I don't see Past Lives having any shot whatsoever because we're saying the Holdovers won't win anything. Past Lives Extra won't win anything. So to me, it's a question of BAFTA because WGA would not tell us anything anyways, even if it existed this year. So yeah, it's really Holdovers or Anatomy, and I'm leaning Anatomy right now.
One thing WGA could have helped us with was the best adapted screenplay category because Barbie isn't competing there, but it would let us know like, hey, what is probably the strongest besides Barbie? Because I still think that if Barbie is going to do anything, and I still think if Barbie's going to show sign of life, of support, and above the line categories, you were saying like, oh, it could have a surge in picture because of the snubs. I think regardless, it was always going to be in screenplay. That's where you can give Greta Gerwig her actual award. She was snubbed for director, but hey, she still won the award that she was nominated for. And that is screenplay. People say of how creative this movie is, how inventive, how just great the writing was. And I think this is the place to reward that because I don't think Oppenheimer's going to win every above the line award it's nominated for, and so far we've said it's either number 1 and number 2 in every category. American Fiction has a shot, but like we won't have WGA to solidify that, and Poor Things could win the BAFTA, so that would be its biggest angle. And I mean, Zone's at BAFTA too. I don't think it's winning, but I just think that hey, it's here, it has precursors if the weird thing happens, but I think Zone's 5. I don't even know what I would put at 4 at this moment. I think 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all neck and neck, where at the end of the day it could be 20, 18, 17, 19%, and then like Zone has like 4 of the votes, and like which one takes the edge right now? I'm feeling Barbie. It feels like the most writery movie here, but again, that doesn't always matter when there's just massive support for an individual film like Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I agree with you that this is a 4-horse race. It's really hard to pick a front runner. I am going to go with American Fiction right now, and let me tell you why. So American Fiction won the Critics' Choice for Adapted Screenplay, and it did that over Oppenheimer, which basically swept the rest of the ceremony. It did that over Poor Things, which also had multiple award wins. Barbie was not in the same category, and Barbie also won the original screenplay prize. So that to me says Barbie and American Fiction are 1 and 2. And if I think about what would win the WGA, it would be American Fiction in my mind. But there's some other interesting things on the table because everything has a shot to win here except Zone of Interest. Because Barbie is, again, it's likely to keep picking up original screenplay prizes through the season, which means we're going to see its strength, but not in this category against these films. American Fiction would pick up WGA. It's possible that it picks up the USC Scripter Award too. But you know what else could pick up USC Scripter? Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer would be a very, very possible winner for USC. So I could see that happen, and that could catapult it a little bit ahead. Then there's also the BAFTA. And I would say BAFTA, at this point from a distance, there's no chance American Fiction wins. So American Fiction losing BAFTA doesn't matter to me, won't impact my prediction whatsoever. But it's a toss-up there between Oppenheimer and Poor Things. If Oppenheimer wins that adapted screenplay prize, then I would say, honestly, it probably means that's number one for the Oscar. If Poor Things wins it, it shows that Oppenheimer truly is weaker in the screenplay category than anywhere else, and I would stick with American Fiction then.
I am at a little bit different than you. I still have Barbie at my number one. However, I think if it does lose the BAFTA, it does show a little bit of weakness. Even if I am currently predicting Anatomy, I still think that Barbie has a great shot there as well, even though they didn't like Barbie on the most part. But I would have American Fiction at my number two. I do agree that it would probably win WGA. Long ago, when you first made your case for American Fiction's chances in Best Picture, you compared it to Jojo Rabbit, some other TIFF winners that, hey, they go on, they win screenplay. This could be another one in that line. And then at 3, I would have Poor Things, and I would have Oppenheimer at 4. But I think all 4 of them, as I mentioned before, are all right around that 20% chance to win, and they're all right there.
Absolutely.
And then Zone's a little bit down.
Yeah, Zone has absolutely no chance. It's not a screenplay movie. It's frankly incredibly lucky to be nominated. I maintain what I was saying all year long. How are you going to nominate a movie that's all about the directing in the screenplay category? There's barely a screenplay to this film.
I read something the other day that kind of made the Zone screenplay nominations make more sense to me. Glazer essentially changed the whole book besides the premise, and that is truly what an adaptation
Even the premise.
should be.
I did read the book. And so I can speak to that a little bit. The book is about different characters. The movie is about real people. And essentially the only thing similar between the book and the movie is that it's set next to Auschwitz and follows the camp commandant.
Well, that's good, but still, I think that is a possible reason to why you get a adapted screenplay nomination, because you're elevating and changing the book. It's not just, text to screen sort of thing, and that could be why it has shown up consistently throughout the season. Obviously, it hasn't won much, but it has shown up throughout the year. So I think that's something that's we can take into the future for be like, oh yeah, when it's an adaptation screenplay, maybe that it's not the most showy writing, but how much are they changing from the book to make it feel like a whole new vision, a whole new project? Speaking of something that is a whole new project and something that completely changed the game, no, you disagree. Cinematography, Oppenheimer, black and white IMAX footage. Is it going to win? Have you swayed on Poor Things? Because I have.
Oh, well, I have Oppenheimer winning, and I've had Oppenheimer winning for how many weeks? I've had Oppenheimer winning since the beginning of January. So, yeah, okay. Oppenheimer, I do think will win. However, this is one of the categories that I think is potentially the easiest to sway. And the reason for that is that year in, year out, we do see upsets in the cinematography category. Think back to 2020, and I think 2020 is the best example that we have for a potential Oppenheimer loss. Because what happened in 2020 was Nomadland won every screenplay prize until ASC. Every screenplay prize, ASC went Mank. Then we went into the Oscar night going, well, that was probably a fluke. It's probably still Nomadland, because Nomadland is going to win Best Picture, and it's just going to take cinematography too. And it didn't. Instead, they went with Mank, and Mank was the upset, but there was signs that it would be Mank, which was the ASC. So what it comes down to for me is who wins ASC. This feels like a year where they could back off of Oppenheimer in one category, and in my mind, cinematography would be one of those categories to back off from Oppenheimer. I say that from a biased perspective because I just think it looks fine. It's not a very special-looking movie. It's good. It's not great. It's serviceable. I've seen some people make the argument that the IMAX framing is a bit wonky, and how they switch from the format so frequently does kind of take away from the feeling that it's very carefully framed. And Poor Things would be the upset in my mind. So if ASC rolls around and they give it to Poor Things, I am sticking with Poor Things. But until that happens, I think Oppenheimer will steamroll.
See, I agree with almost everything that you just said there, where if they do sway, maybe I would lean more towards score, but cinematography would be the second one for me. And there is a possible chance for an upset like Mank, but I think the big thing that drew for Mank was the black and white cinematography. And I guess Poor Things has that a little bit, but Oppenheimer has that the most, besides obviously Maestro and El Conde. But to me, if ASC is going to sway, they may sway to someone that they really like, someone that had a tremendous year across multiple films. And that could be with Rodrigo and Killers of the Flower Moon.
That is actually very true. It could be Rodrigo Prieto. I would also see ASC could go for Matthew Libatique for Maestro. And so really, I think 4 of 5 here do have a chance.
El Conde.
But Oppenheimer is so far out front. So far out front that it doesn't even matter anyways. So until any other award goes for a different movie, I will stick with Oppenheimer.
So let's say Oppenheimer wins ASC, but Poor Things wins BAFTA. Do you still have Oppenheimer, or do you switch to Poor Things?
I still have Oppenheimer. Yeah,
Cool.
at that point, I
would
still
as
have
well.
Oppenheimer.
So a category where we may have Poor Things at number 2 or maybe number 4, depending on where you feel about Poor Things at the moment, to a category where you either have it number 1 or number 2. And I feel like we should do these two categories back to back: costume design, production design, because it's Barbie v Poor Things, and both. Everything else is kind of just there. While there's some great work in the other nominees, they don't have a real shot to win, where Barbie is the out front runner, where all year long it's like, oh, how can Barbie lose costumes? How can it lose production design? It's so beautiful. It's adapting it so well. But what we see kind of time and time again, they like to go for the new things where you're creating stuff like what Poor Things is doing. But at least in the costume design department, I think you said this on Discord, or maybe someone else said on Discord, where it kind of feels like Black Panther versus The Favorite. And I think I agree with that.
I've been saying that all year long.
Where Barbie is going to... I think Barbie's stronger in costumes than in production. I think that if it's going to lose one, it's going to lose production design. But I still think the production design is enough to get it to the win. So I still have Barbie winning both of these awards. Winning... Yeah. I guess I have Barbie winning 4 Oscars, which feels like too much. But at the same time, its 4 categories just feel like so... Or at least 3 of the 4 categories just feel like so much like easy wins.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of people online saying that Barbie is actually not the front runner for costumes or production design, and that to me seems absolutely ridiculous. I've seen some people saying Barbie wins 0 Oscars, which is absolute.
It wins 1 at
lunacy.
least. At minimum,
what the hell are
song.
people talking about? At minimum, it wins song and one of these 2 categories, but I think it wins both. It has the Critics' Choice, which is the only award that's been given out to these 2, but it has Critics' Choice for both costumes and production design. It will win the Art Directors Guild, the Set Directors Association of America, and it will win the Costume Designers Guild. Did I say that? Costume Designers Guild, Art Directors Guild, Set Decorator? I don't know.
Check.
It's going to win all of those. Now, the thing is that it's in a different category at those guilds from Poor Things every time except at the Art Directors Guild. At the Art Directors Guild, both Barbie and Poor Things are in fantasy production design. So if we get to that award and Poor Things takes it, that is a show of strength for Poor Things over Barbie. That said, Poor Things will win all of its categories at those awards too. The only thing that we don't know is, the only thing we don't know is that Art Directors Guild award. The next thing to put it out here is BAFTA. Will BAFTA go for Poor Things in costume design and production design? Because I could totally see BAFTA do 1, 2 of those. And it does, again, make me think of Black Panther. But you have to keep in mind, Black Panther was not nominated at BAFTA in either of these categories either time that it won.
Yeah, for costumes and production design, I am writing out Barbie. I know that back in the Black Panther, the favorite year, I flip-flopped. I had Black Panther. Then after BAFTA stuff, I hopped over to the favorite and lost 2 awards there because Black Panther won them both. So I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I think not just the work that you mentioned there, but the cultural relevancy, how popular these are. You go on Twitter, you go on YouTube, you go on wherever, you're going to see Barbie costumes. You're going to see Barbie production design.
Yep.
While the stuff in the Poor Things is great, you're not going to see that posted on the timeline ever. And I think that plays a subconscious part in your mind as a voter. You're like, oh yeah, I've seen Barbie costumes everywhere. I'm going to vote for that more so than Poor Things costumes, even if they both are equally great. So we just talked about 3 categories in a row where Poor Things is probably number 2. And this next category, most people would not say it's number 1, but I'm sticking to my guns. I'm keeping this at number 1, and that's Best Makeup and Hairstyling, where I do have Poor Things over Maestro.
And unfortunately, I do have Maestro over Poor Things. I briefly swapped and had Poor Things winning Best Makeup and Hair, but I put back Maestro because the whole argument that I was making against Maestro, like, oh, it's gonna lose Best Actor at this point, which means it's not winning here, that doesn't actually work out, because let's look back at a few years. Think back to 2019. 2019, they gave it to Bombshell. So that makeup, I think, was largely for Charlize. And I know you just said it was for John Lithgow and everything, but neither of them were Oscar winners. I mean, Charlize was nominated, but she was not winning, and they completely reconstructed her face. Then there's also Vice. Vice was the exact same thing. And who didn't win for Vice? Christian Bale. Now, who did the makeup for those 2 movies that didn't have Oscar-winning actors and yet had prosthetics that still won? Same guy that did Maestro. And in my opinion, everything with Poor Things that is an argument for me saying this is the best makeup of the year, which is the special makeup effects, the use of the brains, the way that it disfigures Willem Dafoe's face, the guts, the horror makeup, the kind of almost body horror elements of this. Those same reasons why I think it's the best of the year are reasons why some voters will be squeamish about the film and go, ugh, I don't know if I want that to win. So ultimately, Maestro not being the frontrunner for Best Actor does not matter to me. And I think that they're just going to give it to that film because 9 times out of 10, they give it to that type of makeup, and Poor Things does not have that type of makeup.
That's all very true. I don't know. I've not had Maestro all year. I kind of just want to stick to my guns here. I had Dune Part 2 for the longest. I'll still have that for next year once we start those predictions up. I switched to Poor Things after Dune's delay, and I'm just going to hold out with it. I think if we get to BAFTA, Maestro wins over Poor Things, I'll finally admit my losses and move off of it. But I've moved off of some stuff throughout this season that end up happening, and this is one I'm just going to keep sticking with just because I think, not even the fact that Cooper's not winning actor, I just don't feel like there's much passion of people wanting to vote for Maestro when, yeah, sure, you can make the case for Bombshell and Missed Out on Picture. There wasn't much like, oh, we need to award Bombshell. Still won, and you're right that the same lead effect artist was working on both of these. He was, in fact, at the Q&A for Maestro that I saw at the Virginia Film Festival, and he just talked about what went into it, and I think that if he's able to talk to people, you're able to see could work, but I still think, I just don't know. I just feel like they're going to eventually have to break, but every time you try to predict that they're going to break, they never do. So maybe I'm going down a hole that I shouldn't go down for Poor Things, but I'm going to at least stick to it with this, but I'm fully admitting that I don't have the best track record because I had Elvis Over the Whale last year, and this could be it part 2. Here's the fun thing for this category. We haven't done for anything else because it doesn't matter for anything else, but makeup and hairstyling used to be 3 nominees. Let's say that's still the thing this year. Maestro, Poor Things, what's our third nominee?
I actually think that there's a world where it's Maestro, Golda, Society of the Snow. No Poor Things, no Oppenheimer. But I would say more realistically, it's Poor Things, Maestro, Golda.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. I think Oppenheimer is probably more likely to win than Golda, though neither is very likely to win. But I think Golda would have been ahead with just the makeup branch voting.
Because, yeah, if you look in the past, the makeup and hairstyling branch, when they only had 3 nominees, they didn't really nominate many great films. They would nominate films that people either didn't care about, didn't see, or thought were really bad, but they had great or they were impressive or what they just like makeup work. And I feel like Golda kind of checks off those boxes. It would find its way into a category 3. But enough about makeup and hairstyling. Let's get into another category where Oppenheimer probably has in the bag, Best Film Editing, because Oppenheimer's probably going to win the BAFTA, it's probably going to win the Ace, and then it's going to win the Oscar too.
Yep, I would say it's actually guaranteed for Oppenheimer at this point. Editing, what else can win here? There's nothing else that can win. Nothing. There's nothing.
Nothing.
This is one of those prizes where it makes so much sense. Oppenheimer works because of the editing almost more than anything else. The way that they intercut between the timelines. Look, I'm not even a huge fan of Oppenheimer. This would likely be in my top 5 for this category, even as someone who would say Oppenheimer is their like 35th favorite film of the year.
Nice.
Oppenheimer's achievement in editing is fantastic, and it will likely win. Now, I would have loved to see Poor Things win. I think the way that it cuts between formats, the way that it uses the editing to tell the story is really exceptional, but Oppenheimer is winning. And we can't discount that sound correlation stat, which, yes, it broke last year with Everything Ever All at Once and Top Gun, but just because it breaks one year with one of the strongest films in Best Picture of all time doesn't mean that it's going to break again this year. So Oppenheimer takes editing, and it also takes sound.
If we look at the sound category, I think the fun thing to be here is if Oppenheimer wasn't here, what would win? Because in editing, I think you can make the case like, oh, it could be Poor Things with the format changing, or maybe it could be something like Anatomy just because of it's a thriller. This category likes to go for thrillers sometimes. But on sound, on the other hand, I don't think there's a clear number 2. I know that you'll say Zone, but I think if Oppenheimer's not here, would people put Zone at number 1 to win? I think with the other 3 movies here, yes, but we don't know what the other movie was. And Zone just feels like it would be a weird winner. It would be a really cool winner. I've actually now finally see Zone of Interest. Sound, you're right. Everything you've said about it all year, definitely echo your praises there. But if Oppenheimer's not here, I don't know. Would they go Maestro? Would they go Zone? Or would they be funky and say, let's go with some blasters? And the creator.
It would depend if Maestro then took the editing spot, because if Maestro was in both editing and sound, probably would win. But I would still say Zone of Interest would be the one that would win, just because, you know, it's in picture. It's not like it's underseen. People have seen it. People have talked about it. And when people talk about Zone of Interest, they talk about the sound. And to me, that just says this is what the film is riding on. This film would not be here without that sound design. So I would say if Oppenheimer doesn't win, which it is winning, there's no chance anything else wins. But if it didn't win, the Zone of Interest is the next one.
So I just said, like, what if Oppenheimer wasn't here? Well, visual effects, Oppenheimer is not here. So some people have some pretty crazy takes in this category, and at least to me, I think it's kind of cut and dry. We've said all year, like, oh, visual effects winners, you kind of need to have another nomination. Like, oh, well, the creator's not getting another nomination. The creator got another nomination. Why are people still not wanting to accept that the creator will win this award? Because I've seen people be like, oh, it's Marvel's finally time to shine. Oh, Godzilla, it had such a cheap budget. Look at the visual effect work. And I've even seen people say Mission Impossible's going to win. Why will people just not admit the creator is winning visual effects? Everyone agrees that it's the best in the category. It got the additional nomination. They're campaigning it. It checks off all the boxes. And it has the low budget thing that Godzilla has too.
It does, but not exactly the same, because the narrative with Godzilla is that it puts Hollywood to shame. So here's the thing. The creator is the frontrunner. There is no way anyone could make an argument that the creator is not the frontrunner. It has 2 nominations. I mean, Napoleon also has multiple nominations, but the creator has 2 more important nominations. It's also won the Critics' Choice Award. It has the Visual Effects Society, which it will also win. And yeah, when it comes down to all of that, honestly, the creator's far and away the frontrunner, because Godzilla doesn't have any other precursors. Nothing else. There's no other place that it could win. But that's why it's a compelling upset, because the fact that it's not going to win any other awards because it's not nominated anywhere else means that it could be a huge shocker, huge surprise, and the narrative behind Godzilla is incredibly compelling.
See, if I was going to put a number 2, I'd put Napoleon at number 2. You look at visual effects winners in the past, they pair production design sometimes, the work that went in, especially with putting the camera underneath the ice. There's a lot of the war sequences that have the stretching of sets. I just feel like there's a lot going in for that film where I would put that over Godzilla. I love Godzilla. Godzilla's one of my 10 favorite films of the year. It's on my Filmball team. I want the points, but I just don't see an angle for Godzilla winning this category without something crazy happening. But there's no chance for something crazy to happen in the precursors because it's nowhere.
But the only thing that could happen is something crazy. And Napoleon, I would actually say it's below Godzilla because it has all those precursors. It has all the nominations that it needs. Is it going to win a single one of those? No, which means we've seen it lose everywhere else. Godzilla not being nominated, I think, is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of we don't know what would happen if they did nominate it. Because the visual effects Oscar branch, they did something cool by nominating it. These other branches, these other awards, none of them bit on Godzilla. And that means it's still an unknown. It's a complete unknown, and it's very possible that Godzilla could come out of nowhere at the last second, pull an Ex Mach.
I mean, yeah, I guess my knock for Godzilla is the only reason you would vote for it would be a middle finger to Hollywood. But the people who are voting work in Hollywood, so why would they middle finger themselves? It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean,
they're not doing the blockbusters.
The creator's not a blockbuster.
Yeah, no, it's not, but it's still Disney. And it's not like they're voting against the creator.
Century.
What they're voting against is those big Universal movies. They're voting against the DCEU. They're voting against the Marvel movies. They're voting against all of these big budget studio movies that look like shit. And yeah, the creator doesn't look like shit. It is a mid-budget studio movie that looks awesome. But it is still coming from that machine. And so if you want to stick it to the machine that is making crappy quality movies with underpaid visual effects artists, you go with Godzilla.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
I'm still riding with the creator, though.
Yeah, well, good on you. Well, I think that visual effects is locked up, but some people out there don't. But a category I think we can all agree is locked up is Best Original Song. What Was I Made For? Billie Eilish, number 2. Barbie, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it was What Was I Made For? Critics' Choice going for I'm Just Ken was a red herring. I think it's just they like going for the ballads. Ballads are Oscar territory. They will go with the ballad. They will go with What Was I Made For. It is the anthem of Barbie behind Dance the Night because, when they play those Oscar clips, they are going to play Dance the Night likely. But What Was I Made For is probably the film that is probably the song that defines the movie, and it will win Best Original Song.
It Never Went Away was a better song. Could see it maybe upset, but because the song's not good, I don't think it has a shot at all. But what would be a super cool win is the Killer song. It's not gonna win, but I say it would be a super cool nomination. It happened. I'll double down. If it won, it would be a super cool win, but again, not gonna happen.
I'm curious, how are they gonna perform that song? It's gonna be a really interesting performance.
I am very excited for it as well, but one thing I'm still confident of is Ryan Gosling's not performing I'm Just Ken. No,
he's definitely not. Simu might. Simu Liu could.
What's the point? I mean, I watched Barbie again last night to start off our Best Picture Revisiting series, which we're going to be bringing back here to the channel very soon. So, shameless plug, subscribe if you want to see that. Simu Liu's really great in this movie. He knows how to play a jerk. Who would have guessed that he could play a jerk very well? But he knows how to play a jerk super good. So I would be down for it. I would honestly be down if they got all the Kens. And it wasn't Gosling, but it was all the Kens, and they each did a few lines, and they switched off sort of thing. So they have Kingsley Ben-Adir, you have Simu Liu. You just keep switching them out, keep on going in until you have them all come together near the end. And then who knows? Maybe Gosling gets up from the crowd and joins them.
It's possible. I mean, I could see Gosling do it, but I don't think he likes the attention in that way. And he's, frankly, not campaigning at all.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying Gosling's not doing it all year. That's why I thought maybe it could miss all the way back when, but it kept getting nominations. Like, okay, there's no need to project a miss or anything like that. But yeah, Barbie, Billie Eilish, she's winning this number 2 at So Young. Score.
That's crazy.
Can Ludwig win number 2 so young?
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
But yeah, I switched off of Killers after Oppenheimer won the Globe, but I still just think there's a small shot that Killers could upset. If it's winning actress, possibly, it could win something else. If it wins cinematography, it could win something else. And this, I think, is Oppenheimer's most vulnerable category, more so than cinematography. I think if it loses somewhere, it's here, but there's no precedent to predict that so far. I know that Killers won the HMMA Awards, which was a pretty good precursor from what we've looked, but they're very recent. They only have about 8 to 10 years, and they're about like 90% accurate. So there is precedent for a miss, but they've been pretty good so far. I think that a real sign would be when we get to BAFTA. If Killers upsets Oppenheimer there, I'll switch back. Because you brought this up during our Globes predictions that when we were both projecting Killers, it's like, oh, Globes don't have a great track record in score. Oppenheimer went on to win the Globe.
Oppenheimer is very likely to win everything from here on in. It's going to win BAFTA, and, then it wins the Oscar. However, if something else wins BAFTA, I don't think it's Killers. I think it's Poor Things.
Maybe. It could. I mean, both films kind of performed the same at BAFTA. Like, obviously, Killers missed out on big things, but so did Poor Things. Yeah. So, like, I want to see either of them.
No, Poor Things got pretty much everything it needed except Mark Ruffalo.
Yorgos?
Oh, yeah. But it still got screenplay. So, yeah, it missed director. Yeah, I suppose you're right. But I would just, I don't know. Maybe I'm being hopeful, but there's no reason to even think about this because Oppenheimer's just winning everything.
I mean, I will concede on Oppenheimer here, but I still think that it's probably a 60-40. I don't think it's like a 90-10. Until it loses BAFTA. I still think it has a shot till it loses BAFTA.
Really, I think you're giving a little bit too much credit because everything else has gone Oppenheimer. If Oppenheimer's sweeping the way that we think it's sweeping, it takes score.
Very fair enough, and I'm, like I've said for multiple categories here, I'm willing to backtrack once I see the next precursor come in and weigh their voice. A category, though, where I will not change my mind no matter what happens the rest of the year is Best Animated Feature, because Across the Spider-Verse is winning this award. I understand people who have Boy and the Heron, but I don't agree with it at all, based off of what our precursors have been so far, based off of the ACE nomination. No animated feature winner has ever won the award without being nominated. Boy and the Heron wasn't nominated. BAFTA could go Boy and the Heron. I'm still not going to flip-flop.
I would flip-flop if BAFTA went Boy and the Heron, but I think from this point on, we're going to see PGA go Spider-Verse. I think from this point on, we're going to see PGA go Spider-Verse. We're going to see ACE go Spider-Verse. We're going to see, likely, Annie goes Spider-Verse, although there's a small chance Annie goes Nimona, as that was the nominations leader there. But for the most part, I would assume Spider-Verse wins everything from here on, even the BAFTA. Now, I've seen some people say, why would they give Spider-Verse the award again? It's not like it needs it. Well, the reason that they give it again is that it's just the most critically acclaimed film here. People will say, oh, but The Boy and the Heron has the critics' love. If you look at those critics' wins, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is ahead by a mile. You know what the critics should be going for? They should be going for Miyazaki's Swan Song, the big film that everyone's been, waiting for all year long. And yes, it did win trifecta awards, but overall, you look at these regional critics groups, they should be going Boy and the Heron. They're going for Spider-Verse. And to me, that says if even the people who really should be going for Boy and the Heron are not going for it, then why would the Academy go for The Boy and the Heron? Look, I would love to see Miyazaki win another Oscar. I am a Miyazaki diehard, Miyazaki stan, but at this point, it's just Spider-Verse. And the only thing that'll change my mind is if Spider-Verse loses the Annie and if Boy and the Heron wins the BAFTA.
So, to double down on that, people talk about all the time, like, oh, sequels can't win in this category. Well, Toy Story 3 won because it was better than 1 and 2. Across the Spider-Verse is better than Into the Spider-Verse. Toy Story 4 won, but that was a super, super weak category.
I gotta push back on you saying Toy Story 3 is better than 1 and 2.
Well, I think the consensus is 3 that's better than 1 and 2. That's what I'm going off of here, is what the consensus believes. If you look at critical ratings, audience ratings, box office numbers adjusted for inflation.
Okay. Sure. But to be fair, it's not like Toy Story 1 and 2 didn't win the Oscar in animated feature for any reason other than the category did not exist in those years.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they would have been there.
Both 1 and 2.
3 would have won as well, just because how 4 won as well. When you like a franchise, if you're connected, if you think it's good, it's going to win. And Across the Spider-Verse is here. It's good. People like it. It's going to win. And when Beyond comes, it's here. People like it. It's going to win. I think that these are franchises that show they're strong. It's not like Frozen. It's not like I'm trying to think of some other sequels that their first one won, but their second one didn't. Because those movies weren't as well liked. They didn't make as much money. The critics didn't dig them as much. The audience didn't dig them as much. These movies are all showing like, hey, we're showing a growth. It's Toy Story 4 aside, but still a growth. And that we're still going to vote for these films. And then, again, like I said before, Toy Story 4 was in an astronomically weak year where I think if there was a Boy and the Heron, it would have lost. But because there wasn't a Boy and the Heron, it had it in the bag. Well, a category where we both believe there is not a race is Best Documentary Feature. 20 Days in Mariupol, no still, no American Symphony, no competition. Let's get your award.
Yep. And no Beyond Utopia either. When you have 20 Days in Mariupol, who has won quite a few awards, lost the Critics' Choice, but it did win the Critics' Choice Award for Best Political Documentary. It's been losing things, but it has only been losing things to films that aren't here. So without Still, without American Symphony, without Beyond Utopia, there is no chance for anything else to win. I don't even think there's a second place here. If there was, maybe it's Bobby Wine, but it seems like it's just 20 Days in Mariupol. Lock it in.
One thing I want to give you props for, this is 2 years in a row now you've called the documentary winner in January of the year, so I'm very excited for when we do our 2024. I'm very excited for when we do our 25.
Next year it's Daughters.
Daughters? Okay, lock it in. Matt's going 3 for 3, 3 years in a row, calling the winner over a year before the ceremony.
Yeah, Daughters is showing everything out of Sundance that it needs to, which 20 Days in Mariupol showed last year too. I don't know why everyone acts like the documentary category is so difficult to predict from a distance. Like, people will be in October being like, oh, we don't know the contenders for documentary yet. We do. We know them in January. Now, that said, a few of the... Four Daughters is the only film here that last year we would not have known about in January. That said, I don't think anyone in their right mind would have thought Bobby Wine and To Kill a Tiger would be here. But 20 Days in Mariupol, Eternal Memory, we have known about those for a full year now.
Yeah,
and 20 Days in Mariupol, you could have called it winning last year.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think one of the reasons people say this category is difficult is something that we both faced is, what's our actual nominations? That part's hard. But when people say the winner's hard, I don't agree with that, because obviously I'm a step back. I listen to you, I listen to Arno, and I feel like this is now 4 straight years in a row ever since I've been involved with y'all, where we know the winner a year in advance, and it's just like, when will other people start saying, like, oh, Mariupol, oh, Navalny, oh, this movie, oh, that movie are actually
Summer
winning.
of Soul. Summer of Soul, we knew from a long way off it was just going to win. So it's the same thing year in, year out, where you know what the front runners are. This year is very shocking because they literally dropped 3 of the biggest movies in this category for no reason whatsoever. They just gone out of there.
Well, we know why they dropped 2 of them, but Beyond Utopia, I mean, I had it out all year, but it had all the precursors, so it's very shocking that one actually ended up missing. Well, let's keep the trend going of nothing coming close at number 2, because we have Best International Feature. One of these films is in Best Picture, so here's your award.
Yeah, there you go. Zone of Interest wins. The only way this award ever would have been competitive is if Anatomy of a Fall was submitted by France.
I don't even know if it would be competitive. I think Anatomy would just win.
Well, but we would still have to entertain, there's a question between the two. It would be Anatomy of a Fall. It would be. But it would be the first time ever that we would see multiple Best Picture films in this category, because normally what happens is we have one Best Picture film in, we go, oh, I wonder what's winning, and then it wins. So Zone of Interest, it wins here, but I think it would have been a little bit tougher to predict. We could have made an argument either way if Anatomy was here, but I think Anatomy would have just won.
All right, I'll do the same thing I did with Oppenheimer a little bit earlier. We remove Zone of Interest. What wins? Nothing else here has won anything that matters.
Society of the Snow wins. Society of the Snow wins because it has other nominations. It has more visibility. Other nominations, it has one other nomination. Yeah. But it does have more visibility, and it hits some of those feel-good... it's not a feel-good movie, but it hits some of those crowd-pleasing moments that people crave in this type of film. So yeah, in a year with no Best Picture nominees, I would say Society of the Snow takes it.
Okay. I think I would agree. I think if anything were to upset it, it might be Perfect Days, because that's the most happy movie of the bunch. But again, that had very poor performance in the precursors. Visibility is definitely an issue with that film. Maybe Teacher's Lounge at Sony Pictures Classics. They know how to make sure people watch their films at the right time. I'm apologizing to Sony Picture Classic. I don't know why I ever doubted you this year of Teachers Lounge. I know why I did. You had a horrible precursor
No.
performance, but
Yeah, there was no precursors at all.
They show every year when they have something living, The Father, the Teachers Lounge, whatever it is in any category. If they try, they will get it. And I think that is another lesson for us next year. Is if Sony Pictures Classics has a movie somewhat in a race, we have to put it in somewhere.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but I see where you're coming from. I'm never, ever, except for Netflix, I'm never going to base anything in international feature off of who is distributing it.
All right, so let's dive into these shorts categories. I mean, we did a whole, or
Hell yeah.
you did a whole deep dive about them, and the results were pretty good, I think so. And I think your winners in every category at least got nominated. I don't know if you had Once Upon a Studio get in.
Once Upon a Studio was my winner,
okay.
so I did.
I didn't know if you had that at 1 or if you had 95 Senses as your number 1, but that did get nominated, so I'm assuming that's your new number 1.
Yeah, so Best Animated Short, let's talk about it. I know Gold Derby has Letter to a Pig over 95 Senses. I think that is a grave mistake. Letter to a Pig would be my second place, although I would see if something gets name-checked, it's probably War is Over. But I think it's 95 Senses. If people watch the films, 95 Senses is emotional. It has very creative animation. It pulls on the heartstrings in a way that voters really like. And Letter to a Pig is a very interesting looking film, but it would be a very artsy winner. It's not the type of winner we often see. So I would say 95 Senses takes this award, but there's always a possibility for a windshield wiper-esque win where they go for something kind of weird, kind of out there, and I do think that would be Letter to a Pig or Pachyderm, maybe.
Okay, so our uniform is the only one that doesn't have a shot to win.
Yeah, our uniform is the only one that doesn't have a shot to win. I'm really happy that I called the nomination, but this type of film gets nominated all the time. It never, never wins. So War is Over. If that wins, it's based on the name check. Letter to a Pig and Pachyderm would win based on the artsy, kind of weird nature of the films. And 95 Senses would win on the emotional impact of the story. And that's why I'm going with it. It feels like a winner to me.
All right, Best Documentary Short. Do you still have ABCs of Book Banning at your number 1?
I do have ABCs of book banning because I think the documentary short category is a category where people don't often watch the films, and they will vote for whatever has the most interesting title of the bunch, and that is the ABCs of book banning. This is the one where you read that title, you go, oh, that's an important movie, I guess I'll vote for it. It's not the best film here, for sure. It's not the best film at all, but it is the film that seems to be saying the most. It seems to be the most important.
Let's move us to, I think, the one people care the most about. Best live action short, Wes Anderson. Is he winning?
Well, look, the only barrier to Wes Anderson winning this award was getting the nomination. As we often see, they like to gatekeep this prize away from the major filmmakers. But the people doing the gatekeeping are not the rest of the Academy. They are the Shorts branch. And the Shorts branch will take a little bit more to give one of those big directors a nomination. However, the rest of the Academy does not have any holdups whatsoever. And that's why they typically gatekeep, because they know if they put a big name into the category, the big name will win. And the big name will win here. That's just what's going to happen. The wonderful story of Henry Sugar will take this prize. I don't think anything else is possible. That said, if there is a second place, Night of Fortune, without Wes Anderson, I think Night of Fortune would win. It's a dark comedy with a heart of gold. It's very sweet, very funny, and incredibly lovable, and I think that will do a lot to push it ahead. I would also say Red, White, and Blue has the societal importance angle. It's a film that's difficult to speak about without spoiling what it goes into, but I think some voters will finish watching that film and go, oh my God, wow, this is important. This is a movie of the moment, and that could catapult it ahead. So it's Wes Anderson with no one else around, but if there was no Wes Anderson, the question is, do they go with the sweet comedy or do they go with the relevant drama?
Fair enough, fair enough. Everyone out there, this is the conclusion of our first, I guess, predictions post nominations. We're going to definitely have another one once we get a little closer, post BAFTA, post SAG, final stuff. But as always, let us know down below, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Are we just missing something? A narrative out there, a push for a certain film, or are we way too overconfident in certain stuff? I sure am with Poor Things in Makeup, but I'm willing to hear the discourse for all these stuff. And as always, you know, last self-plug here, Discord, link down below. Join us for a conversation. Join, I don't know what we're up to now. I think we have like 150, 200 people in our Discord. People talking, people chatting. You can chat too. But until next time, my name's Dyl.
And my name's Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.